His dancing was the most charismatic of the rock era.
When I was just real little, I used to watch Sammy Davis, Fred Astaire, and James Brown, and just dancing about the house. So I don't remember not dancing.
I met Michael at Sammy Davis's house when he was about 12. And he just, you just fall in love with Michael at any age.
He's just an amazing person. He's incredible. He really is. I'm not saying that just because he's my brother.
I think he wants to look like what he perceives as makes him feel happy about himself, you know? I do think he's quite beautiful, though, by the way.
Most of my dreams seem to come true, and I'm so thankful that they do.
An arrest warrant for Mr. Jackson has been issued.
Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court. I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen.
The singer Michael Jackson is reported to have died from a heart attack.
One wish would be as simple as making the whole world happy and world peace, and that is part of the reason why I do what I do.
First started singing, my mom was an avid country western singer, and she used to love this song called Cotton Fields Back Home, And we used to join in and sing harmony with her. Little baby, my mama used to rock me in the cradle. And say, oh boy, Cotton Fields Back Home.
We love that music thing, and I think all great things happen at that point.
Great things influenced by some great musicians and some great tunes.
Temptations, the whole Motown era. My Girl, Papa was a Rolling Stone.
When Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, signed the Jackson 5, he assembled a group of songwriters and producers, and he said, give me 3 number ones for the first 3 releases by this group. And in the end, he had 4 number ones with the first 4 releases, and then 2 number 2s. They were almost instantly huge stars, and Michael was the focal point. I saw Michael Jackson perform with the Jackson 5, and he and they were galvanizing. They had these colorful costumes, choreographed routines, and he had this charisma. Of course, he was standing out from his brothers. We all know that. Right from the very first scream at the beginning of I Want You Back, he was the one who was the one.
I met him when he was 5 years old at the Apollo Theater singing Who's Loving You, emulating Smokey Robinson, our hero of Motown recordings, and James Brown. His father had brought them to the Apollo, and they were on the show with some adults, and Michael was singing very much like an adult, as if he knew what he was singing about. So how would he know, how would he feel that? How blessed this child is. 2 years later, he was at Motown Records.
It was only natural that Motown would spin him off as a solo artist. He had a top 10 with his first solo release, and after he'd had Rockin' Robin and Got to Be There, he had his big number 1, Ben. But the real big news was when Michael made his first solo album for Epic, Off the Wall. Quincy Jones was the musical director.
I met Michael at Sammy Davis's house when he was about 12. And he just, you just fall in love with Michael at any age. And The Wiz was when we really connected. Then he was a scarecrow, and he'd pull out bits of paper, quotes with Confucius, etc., all these great philosophers. And one time he says, blah, 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 signed Socrates. And he kept saying Socrates, 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 and nobody would correct him. And after a while, I took him over to the side. I said, Michael, forgive me if you know, but it's Socrates, you know. And at that moment, our eyes met, and something happened that's never changed since then.
With Off the Wall, he only had a Grammy win in a rhythm and blues category, and he was very depressed. He'd had all these hits, and yet the industry still saw him as a rhythm and blues artist. And Quincy Jones said, well, the reward you got was the pleasure you gave. But that's why when Thriller happened, he reveled in the Grammy wins. And that year he had 7 Grammys for the Thriller material and another Grammy for Best Children's Album, which was E.T. And from that point on, he wanted to be the king of pop.
I pretty much did the album and just sat back and watched because it was another one of my dreams. I always loved watching the children when they wear all the gear and everything and imitate me. I think it's fun. It's stunning good taste. It's just a series of collecting songs and writing songs in my mind over a period of years or whatever. And it's hard to say how one creates music because it's hard for me to take credit. I feel it's more spiritual and heavenly than I can't take credit.
The most popular star of the 80s converged early on Wembley to be met by scores of touts, some of whom were asking but never getting £100 for a ticket. Security around the stadium was high profile, 1,000 guards from companies hired by Jackson's managers to protect the star's business interests. There was a crackdown on people selling merchandise bearing Jackson's image. The fans, as expected, were ecstatic.
He must be the best man on earth to give you a show. He is terrific.
Good dancer, good dancer.
Dancer is fantastic.
The audience was made up of people of all ages.
Years old.
Daughter,
Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Up to my age.
How old are you?
42.
People all over the world could take to Michael Jackson without knowing the English language. Carlos Acosta said the boys in Cuba didn't know what he was saying, but it didn't matter because it sounded good and he looked great. And this makes Michael the first great pop star of the visual era.
you a Michael Jackson fan?
Yeah.
What do you like about him?
Everything.
Tell me, what numbers do you like of his?
All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. Black and white and all his numbers.
We need food, we need water.
But more than anything else, we need Michael!
Wearing his now customary black mask, the pop star headed south for his next concert venue, farewelled by Queensland fans. Jackson arrived in Melbourne a short time ago to a very enthusiastic welcome. In an interview for Hey Hey It's Saturday, he said he is a workaholic who hardly ever relaxes. His first Melbourne concerts will be at the MCG tomorrow night.
Just real little, I used to watch Sammy Davis, Fred Astaire, and James Brown, and just dancing about the house.
His dancing was the most charismatic of the so-called rock era. His dance steps he studied Fred Astaire, James Brown, and Marcel Marceau, from whom he got the moonwalk.
Michael, this way. Michael, this way. To your left, Michael.
So much of what we think is just miraculous because it looks so seamless is actually the result of hard work, learning how to join elements of a dance together to make it look like a spontaneous flow. Michael Jackson actually has a patent for that leaning over stance that makes him look like he's defying gravity. And what it was he had holes in his shoes and pegs on stage so that if he planted his shoes on the pegs, he could lean over in Smooth Criminal and look like he was actually defying gravity. That just goes to show how his imagination was working over time for the dance.
My favorite thing about doing this spring video is it was really an excuse to work with my sister Janet.